YouTube Qué Golazo family, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video right now as we discuss the end of World Cup qualifiers in South America and one playoff spot still to remain. All right, stay with us. So much more to come. The madness that is South American qualifiers is over as Brazil and Argentina remain dominant. Ecuador already through and Uruguay ending on a high. But it's the end of the road for Chile, Colombia as Peru once again earn a playoff spot. Qué Golazo with Jaime Macias. South America begins right now. Hey, everybody, welcome to Qué Golazo. Thank you so much for being part of the family. YouTube.com/Qué Golazo, Qué Golazo Pod on Twitter, and of course, CBS Sports and your CBS Sports app. Jaime Macias is back. How are you, Jaime?
How you doing, Luis? Kind of sad, man, because the best tournament in the history of soccer, at least in the way we have enjoyed for the last 20 years, is coming to an end. So a little bit nostalgic.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. As everybody knows, by the time 2026 comes around, it's a whole different format, more teams in there, of course. So obviously the end of Conmebol qualifiers as it was. And I agree, Jaime, I wasn't thinking about that though much because of the euphoria of last night. But yes, it's the end of it. So it's very, very sad.
You had a lot to think about last night. I was thinking about you the whole night, and I was looking your Twitter posts and how euphoric you were.
Thank you, my friend. Only you are one of the many that can tolerate all my tweets. But hey, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's begin, of course. Before we get into the fifth spot playoff, of course, another storylines, Jaime. I did want to remind everybody that this table still dominated by Brazil and Argentina. Both are undefeated. And Brazil, a record number, 45 points. It's never been achieved. I think they passed Argentina from the 2002 qualifying campaign with 42 points. But Brazil and Argentina, obviously, they have to face each other later after that suspended game. But they are clearly, Jaime, the dominant forces in South America.
They are the dominant forces. They are the two last Copa America champions. They are also the two last South American teams to play a World Cup final. And at the end, that record can be longer. Like Brazil can reach 46 or 48 points in case they beat Argentina. We don't know if we're going to end this qualifying with two or just one unbeaten team. But at the end, apart from those small details, the gap between Brazil and Argentina and the rest of the continent, it's getting bigger every time.
Absolutely. Well said. And that's exactly what's happening. We will talk about how we think Brazil, Argentina, and the other countries that qualify for the World Cup will do in November and December. But first, let's talk about what really matters, Jaime Macias, because Peru, once again, thanks to Ricardo Gareca, have made the fifth spot, the qualifying playoff spot, who will face either Australia or United Arab Emirates in June. I've already said it, Jaime. I was on HQ earlier talking about how if you don't follow South American football, you need to know that Peru doesn't have a good, strong domestic league. We don't have superstars. And what Ricardo Gareca has done, again, is kind of amazing. Your thoughts on Peru beating Paraguay at home 2-0 to earn that fifth spot in Conmebol?
It was a difficult scenario because you need to know what was happening in the other two games. Peru had the upper hand, but we said last week, whoever scores the first goal is going to have a big advantage. I was watching the three games at the same time, and the minute Lapadula scored Peru first goal, you saw how the performance of Colombia and Chile just dropped. Like they knew that the team they needed not to win was winning, and that had an impact. So that Lapadula goal at the 7th minute was key on what was coming next, and all that anxiety and pressure and expectation that came down, and Peru started performing as it has been performing during this whole second half of the qualifier. Luis, in the second half of the qualifiers, Peru has lost 3 games: visiting Brazil, visiting Argentina, and visiting Uruguay.
Amazing.
The top 3 teams in this qualifier. Yeah, there is a defeat against Bolivia in there, but that was a game that was in the middle of a triple header because it was not played when it has to be. It has to be played. Let's put the fact that Peru it's qualifying to this playoff spot with less points than what they did towards Russia, but with more points on the field, because Peru had those 3 points against Bolivia, the last qualified, that, yeah, in the standings they count, but they didn't get it on the field. This time they had get more points on the field, and that is an improvement on this Gareca team.
Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Statistics aside, numbers aside, just also had to deal with the fact that we were moving on from Paulo Guerrero and Jefferson Farfán, because obviously they were getting older and getting injured. We had to, rely Gianluca Lapadula, the Taku Taku Rigatoni king, had to come to Peru. He didn't start playing for Peru till 2020, of course. So there was a lot of things, Jaime, that really has made this quite special. I mean, it's not done, right? Obviously, there needs to be another game in June, but it is pretty amazing, taking in mind, and of course, include your thoughts on the fact that Colombia are not at the World Cup, and neither now Chile, and that's, you would think, the end of the golden generation for them.
That Copa America 2020 that a lot of teams didn't want it to be played came in a good shape for Peru. Peru clicked after that World Cup. The team that played in Russia was a young team, and it didn't need a whole lot of changes for this qualifier, but certain positions, key positions, they need some replacement, some new players, some new blood to the team. And one was Paulo Guerrero. Everybody knew that Paulo was not going to be available for the whole qualifier. And it took a long time for Lapadula to engage. And that Copa America was key on Lapadula making click with the team. But the other was the two center backs. The center backs at the World Cup were Ramos and Rodriguez. And Peru started the qualifier with Abraham and Araujo. And after that Copa America, Callens came in, a lefty, fast center back that plays in a team, New York City, with the same style as Peru, who is comfortable playing away from the goal. And Zambrano, his transfer to Boca gave us another player, a player that is not a red card per game. And Peru was the second best defense on the second half of the qualifiers. So that's a fact. Like, we know Lapadula importance, but how the team grew from the back line is also very important, Luis. And if you see the lineup that Peru played against Denmark and against France, it's basically the lineup that qualified yesterday, plus these three names that I just tell you.
Yep, a very, very good point at the back. I literally just tweeted before we started talking about Alex Callens, and now to me, he's been a revelation. I remember interviewing him when he first moved to NYCFC, and he wanted to get the attention of Ricardo Gareca, who was not even thinking about Alex Callens. And now look, and you mentioned Carlos Zambrano for Boca Juniors. Unbelievable. A very good point there, Jaime Macias. Very quickly on, who's it worse for, Jaime, do you think? Chile, who are saying essentially goodbye to the likes of Arturo Vidal and Alexis Sanchez, or Colombia, who have tremendous talent from all over, but just couldn't score to save their lives up to these last two matches? Who's it worse for?
I think it's worse for the future for Chile, because it's not like Colombia that they could not bring new players, that they cannot bring new blood for the national team at that, or that they had top players that at the end didn't perform in the national team. And I think that's the case what happened with Colombia, and that's what is frustrating for Colombia, to missing the playoff for 1 point, because they feel they had the quality, and that's the narrative around Colombia. When you see Chile, the momentum of the Chilean soccer is very weak. They didn't bring new players because they don't have it. Their clubs are not performing at the international level. Their youth national teams are not performing as they were used to. Let's not forget that this generation, this golden generation that get to that won the two Copa Americas, they finished third in the Under-20 World Cup in 2007. If people can go and see the images of what happened yesterday in San Carlos de Apoquindo at the end of the game when Chile was eliminated from the World Cup, it was flag, it was a standing ovation, it was people clapping, it was the board saying thank you for the glory days. And I think that the Chilean fans know this generation gave it all. They don't have players that are coming from behind to replace them, and that it was a great run, but it's coming to an end.
Yeah, no, a very good point on La Roja. We will see how they develop. Part of it, obviously, the domestic game as well. All right, well, we know who are going to the World Cup. Definitely Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Ecuador. Of course, those 4 teams in the playoff spot. For Peru, as we mentioned, they will face the winner of Australia or United Arab Emirates. So my question to you before we get into it, the South American teams at the World Cup. Let's exclude Peru for a second. Let's talk about Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Ecuador. How do you see them faring at the World Cup? Because the last time in Russia, it wasn't great, obviously. And now, once again, we see how South American teams do in Qatar. How do you see it happening? Very gut instinct. You can change your mind, obviously, as we get closer to the World Cup. But right now, how do you see it?
Brazil is the favorite to compete for the World Cup.
I agree.
I think Argentina has found deep starting 11. They have found a solid team, and everybody's talking about these 31 games unbeaten. Okay, but let's not forget that this 31 games unbeaten, in that streak, there is only one European team that was Germany. All the other games were against South American teams or Central American teams, and they haven't played that second game against Brazil. So it has like a trick inside us. So we don't know how this team that is dominating the continent level with Brazil is going to perform against an European superpower or an European second level team, which are also very, very strong. Then Brazil is a team that has a better depth in their squad. They have key players in every position. Like Alisson is one of the best goalkeepers in Europe. The center backs are top on European leagues. Casemiro is one of the best midfielders in the world. And in the end, I don't think Neymar is at the level that he was 5 years ago. I don't think Neymar is a key player in the national team, not even in his team in PSG. But you have a lot of players that can solve problems on the forward line. So it's not that, it will depend on how Neymar gets to the World Cup. I also think, Luis, that there are more teams capable of winning the World Cup than they were 3 or 4 World Cups ago. So
yeah,
I think that if Brazil gets to the semifinal, it's a good prediction. And if they get to the semifinals, it will be a good World Cup for them, considering what it's around. Yeah, probably it's an underachieving for a team that won 5 of them, but times have changed. All the national teams have evolved too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they've won 5, but, it's been a while since they've won 1. And you made a very good point, which is this World Cup is going to be really competitive, I think. I just think Argentina has a very strong 11 and some very good players on the bench. Brazil can put 3 teams to this point. They're so good. And also, Coach Chiche, this is his final World Cup with them. I feel like that might be the added incentive for them as well.
And I'm curious on how this window, and you have Fabrizio Romano, you can ask him how this transfers window is going to go for the players from these 2 national teams. Because the gap between qualifying and playing the World Cup now that the World Cup is in November is the same gap in time. But the players that qualify in November, they knew that they were going to play in a certain team, in a certain league before the World Cup. Now we're having a summer transfer window in the middle. And where those players are going to move is going to be key on how they are going to perform on the World Cup. And I think that the Argentinian players, they can decide their future based on what they want with the national team.
Yeah, no.
I don't know all the players from all the national teams have that power.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Lautaro Martinez will be an interested player to watch in the summer. Rafinha, reportedly from Fabrizio Romano, obviously Barcelona are looking at him as well, but it's not just him. There's so many.
Julian Alvarez, who scored the goal yesterday, he's going to be in Manchester City.
Player, of course, exactly.
We don't know if he's going to be playing. He's going to be in the bench. He's going to be loaned. What is going to be his situation towards preview to the World Cup?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to think about. It's very specific just because this World Cup is not in the summer and we have to wait a little bit further. A very good point. All right. Well, let's make some final thoughts here then. Any final thoughts regarding the qualifiers going into the World Cup? Jaime, I know that you had a great tweet as well regarding the pots, because obviously the draw is on Friday and you were asking people, who would you like for your national team in the groups? And we've done a few simulators here regarding the pots. Obviously, we have to wait to see the winners of those intercontinental places, but you can only have one, at least, the only continent that can have 2 in a group is Europe, right? A maximum of 2 just because of the number of places that they have. But any thoughts from this? Because it got a lot of engagement, Jaime.
Well, it's a tricky pod, and I recommend people to do it from pod 4 to pod 1, because the intercontinental playoff between Peru and the Asian team is going to block a lot of groups. So basically, the winner of that intercontinental playoff is going to face two European teams, either Morocco or Senegal, or Mexico, the US, or Canada, if Canada ends up in pod number 3. So that's the team, or that's the team that will know easily, or will have less choices of teams to play. But there's a possibility that we have 6, and I'm not want to be unlucky to you, but there's a possibility that we have 6 Asian teams, or that we have 5 South American and 5 Asian teams for 8 groups. So there are going to be more than one group involving an Asian and a South American crash. It's going to be very difficult. The rules on the draw says minimum 1 European team, maximum 2. The only confederation that can have more than 1. All the other confederations can only have 1 per group. So it's going to be interesting, and you can build the best scenario for your team and the worst scenario for your team. Look, Luis, Germany is in pot 2. So we know that the one that gets Germany, that's going to be a tough team.
Oh my God, man. Like, I'm just, as you're talking, by the way, I'm also doing the simulator.
You're getting anxious.
And it's absolutely ridiculous. First of all, USA and Peru are in every single group every time I do the simulator. That's if we beat, obviously, Australia or United Arab Emirates. But then, to your point, I mean, I'm seeing teams like Belgium, Ghana, Uruguay, South Korea. I mean, England, Germany, Senegal, and Saudi Arabia, Portugal, Mexico, Tunisia, Ecuador in a group. I mean, Argentina, Switzerland, Japan, Wales. That's pretty easy for Argentina, I guess, regardless of where you're thinking. But to your point, it's going to be really competitive, Jaime.
No, and the other point is that the European team that comes from the playoff that haven't been played, the Wales, Ukraine, and Scotland.
Yeah.
Well, Wales and Ukraine, any of those 2 teams, if they were already qualified, they will be in pot 2. So basically, you're going to, if it's not Scotland, you're going to get a team that has the level of being in pot 2 coming from pot 4.
Des Norris just did the simulator, and he gave me Peru, Portugal, Senegal, and Croatia. Oh, well, that's great, isn't it? We're going to have a lot of fun here. And Jaime, I'm sure we're going to have you back more. But Jaime Macias, make sure to follow him on Twitter and social media, and all his work as well for Fútbol Infinito, and of course MLS en Español and MLS, of course. Jaime, final thoughts before we say goodbye, my friend.
That the distance in some teams had come closer. I think we had to put a value on Bolivia. Bolivia is going to be a contender for the next World Cup. The thing is, Bolivia is coming from so back behind that the simple fact that they fight and they gave a fight until the end is an improvement. They are building a new academy. They are building a new structure. They are improving their club system. And I think that Bolivia is going to be a team to fight for a spot for the next World Cup. And Colombia is going to need to take some decisions on how they approach their national teams, because they need to change the structure. And Chile too, but I think that the Chile problem is way deeper than Colombia.
Yeah, as you mentioned, my friend. But Jaime Macias, thank you so much, my friend, for being here. I always appreciate Jaime. Muchas gracias, compadre.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for the playoff. Good luck playing in Qatar. That game is going to be in Qatar.
Well, you know, I'm reading though, Jaime, that reportedly they're thinking about it too, because it might be in Europe now, or they might go back to the 2-legged. But if it is in Qatar better watch out, because the entire Peru is going to show up, my friend.
Enjoy.
Thank you, brother, and obviously buena con Ecuador. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being part. By the way, make sure to follow YouTube. Make sure to follow us on youtube.com/Qué Golazo. Like and subscribe, please, on YouTube. The more you like, the more you subscribe, the more great videos we can make.